How's everyone going? I feel like this is the calm before the storm since we're here on Oscar week. This is where all the Academy Award madness will happen here in the next few days. Plus, I have some few other surprises that I'm got for you guys, especially you, Rick. You're gonna really love what I have for you later on in the show. But before we get that far into it, let's go ahead and introduce everyone. You guys know me as Society Reviews, and to my right here is our good buddy Rob Motto. How you doing there, Rob?
Good. I'm looking forward to getting drunk on Sunday for that terrible awards show.
I see you're testing out your new mic tonight too, so there's quality improvement on the show. Hopefully, my mark isn't screwing up too bad. I know I was having some issues before I was coming on here, so I can only hope that it stabilizes. And then joining us right below us with our Texas hat. Is that just a generic Texas hat you're wearing right now, Rick?
No. This is the let's see if I can get that. The 2023 spring training Texas Rangers cap that I picked up over the weekend.
I thought you were gonna be wearing like a Houston Astros cap or something like that.
No. God forbid.
Yeah, just don't wear that hat on your trip to Los Angeles. That's all I'll say.
You know what? I think I think I might have found a perfect cap to wear when I go to Los Angeles.
So which one is that?
It's one that says Taliesin. I picked that up from Taliesin when I went to Wisconsin. And unless some gang has a beef against Frank Lloyd Wright, I don't think that I'm going to be targeted.
You better check. I mean, you never know. No, there's a lot of Hispanic gangs out there, and I don't know what their code of conduct is when you head out there either.
Well, so, if they're Hispanic, it's raza. I'll be fine. They're not going to attack me. I can sing Morrissey to them.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that one.
Come on.
They may think that you're an OG from another set, and then they decide to roll up on you. So,
well, I'll show it off next time, and then you guys can tell me.
Well, we got a couple of good films to talk about here tonight. At least I hope we got a couple of good films to talk about here tonight. But before we get started there, let's introduce our guys in the chat. Our good buddy Duke is here singing World Cup. I don't know why. Maybe some soccer related happening that I didn't know about, but we'll keep that in mind. Alex vs. Evil's joining us here tonight. Zero Dozer says hey, and Scott Westbrook is also here. Joining us in the chat as well. But before we get too far into kind of like the movie discussion here, I did want to talk about one thing. Obviously, this is something that we've been, I guess, arguing amongst ourselves internally. Do we really want to do this? But I guess we should go ahead and make the announcement that we are going to be doing an Oscar stream on Sunday. So all 3.5 hours of Oscar-related fun that no one else is going to watch except for us, especially if you've seen the ratings over the last 10 years. But we're going to go ahead and suffer through it. So I got to ask a question for Rick, and then Rob can go into this one as well. It seems like this award show is primed for everything, everywhere, all at once to win all the awards except for Best Picture. That seems to be the trend with a lot of these things. Like one movie will clean up all the awards, all the individual awards, and then they'll give something else Best Picture. That seems to be the trend here. So I think there was a follow-up of what we had last week where we talked about Brendan Fraser possibly winning, was it Best Actor? Because it seemed to be that was the trend there. But let me ask you, Rick, if you had to vote for something right now, what is your favorite for Best Picture? And do you believe that everything, everywhere, all at once is going to clean up this year?
I think everything, everywhere, all at once will end up winning. It wouldn't be my vote. I would pick Top Gun Maverick to be the Best Picture out of the 10 nominated.
Yeah, but we can't pick a movie that everyone's actually seen and liked. So we have to go with the one with all the Asian people.
Well, there's a token white lady in there, the one that had the dildo, I guess.
Oh yeah, right. Diarrhea yogurt. I remember her. What was her name? Was in Halloween?
Activia.
Yeah.
So I think it is, and I think it's going to actually break a long-standing custom where the Best Picture winner tends to lose Best Film Editing. I think this year it will win both. And I think it will take 2 of the acting awards. I'm not thrilled that it's going to probably win Best Director because I don't think it was that well directed compared to maybe some of the others and some of the other non-nominees. Yeah. I hate to break it to you guys, but I do think Women Are Talking, and I know I said that incorrectly, will win adapted screenplay. because you have to give it something at some point. So
Do we though? Do we actually have to give it anything?
yes, we do. Yes, we do. Um, so yeah, I think everything everywhere all at once. It has a very strong and passionate group of supporters. The preferential ballot. mm, I mean, it's possible that it could lose, but I really don't see what else it would win. Women talking is not going to win. Tar is not going to win. The Fablemans. Oh my gosh, I think that's going to probably go home empty-handed. It's probably going to lose everything. Um, maybe I mean, maybe if enough people rally around Top Gun, but honestly, I don't see anything else winning. I don't see any of the other nominees taking everything everywhere all at once down. It's just been marching towards victory for all this time. So yeah, expect there to be a good number of Oscars for everything everywhere all at once. Whether we'll remember it in 5 years, who knows?
Definitely won't. But Rob, what out of the list that they have at the Academy Award, what would be your pick, and what do you think is actually going to win this year?
Yeah, it's funny. I was pretty lukewarm on it when I saw it at first, but I think Tar is probably my pick for Best Picture out of all the choices.
Hmm.
Just because I think it's a movie that you can revisit more than once to try to see maybe like what Todd Field like what he's trying to explore in that movie.
Yeah,
Because I think on some level it's about cancel culture. On some level it's sort of about is this woman guilty of the things that these people are claiming? Because to me, it's never proven that she is. She just loses her shit and beats the crap out of that, like, the rival composer. So, like, I think that movie certainly deserves some introspection and going over it more than once. But I can't really say that about a lot of the Best Picture nominees. I've seen them all except for All Quiet on the Western Front,
yeah.
the remake of the 19 I think it was 1930.
1930. Yeah,
Yeah.
1930 Best Picture winner.
Which is a great film, but I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. That's the one movie that I could see winning just because I've heard some buzz about it, potentially surprising. But I'm kind of in line with Rick, where Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a movie I couldn't remember the title of earlier in the year, is probably going to win Best Picture. So, and look, I liked I'll call him the Daniels. I liked the Daniels first movie, Swiss Army Man, um because kind of just a weird, like, kind of quirky movie. So the fact that they've gone from that to a Best Picture winner in 6 years is kind of insane. But yeah, I just, at this point, a lot of the categories are predictable. I don't think Angela Bassett's a shoe-in, certainly. But I think that all the categories that Everything Everywhere All at Once are poised to win are they'll probably win.
Yeah, well, I think supporting actress is the one where it will not win, and I do think it's going to be Carrie Condon for the Banshees of Inisherin. That I think will take 2 Oscars. Um, Best actor is still a two-man race. It's still going to come down to the wire whether they're going to go with Austin Butler or Brendan Fraser. Michelle Yeoh and Kate Blanchett are also fighting it out for actress. I give the slight edge to Yeoh because I think
Yeah.
she's won more and she's got that momentum going. So I think the only real lock, if you want to call it that, is Best Supporting Actor with Ki Hui Kwan from Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you
Oh
want to call him
man.
short, if you
So
want to call him short round, go ahead, call him short round.
did you guys see the shit I got for basically, like, so I basically was trolling, like, I forget who it was, IndieWire, Variety, basically, like, he was complaining about the fact that he was going to lose his acting
Is that?
job and lose his
He,
SAG
Oh,
insurance
he
yeah.
lost his
and shit.
insurance.
Yeah, and he did. And I was like, "Oh, now you have to get a job like the rest of us." And so it was just like me being a dick, but like,
Mhm.
oh my god, people like lost their shit over it. And it was just like, that one genuinely surprised me. There's stuff I've said that is genuinely inflammatory, or I'm expecting that kind of response. That was just like, oh, okay, like you're really upset that this guy isn't more the hot
How
commodity
dare you
Hollywood.
should how dare you suggest that he has to work like the peasants? How dare
He's
Well,
short round. He's best known for a role that was like, that's what, over 40 years old. So I
just
just
about.
or about 40 years old. So I mean, it's like, I get it. Nostalgia porn is a hell of a drug, but holy shit, you'd expect you were talking about like Robert De Niro or something. It's
Well,
like,
Yeah.
no, it's this Asian kid from the Goonies.
my theory is that you got pilloried for that because he's genuinely likable. When you see him at all these award shows, he just has such an exuberant enthusiasm, and people really have embraced him. This is a bigger comeback than Brendan Fraser, and people really like him as a person, and they just really embraced him. So it felt like you were almost, I'm not saying that you were, but it felt like you were punching, way below the belt, kind of to tie into one of the
That's all
movies
I
we're going to
do
talk
is
about.
punch below the belt. I'm like
Yeah.
Mike Cero gone. First kick in the match is going to be a dick kick. That's how I
Yeah,
roll.
true enough. True enough. You're gonna be like Diamond Damien. I would say that's the reason, I think, because he's likable. People have embraced him. People like the comeback narrative, and so when you apparently mock the fact that he lost his health insurance after a performance that is likely to win him an Oscar, yeah, people went after you. But this should be par for the course for you, Roberto. You should be used to having people just go off after you. You're not the cuddly person that we all know here online.
Yeah, it's true.
That cuddly little porcupine, as we like to call him.
Yeah.
I saw that you and Sarah were getting into it a little bit there. What was that whole deal about?
Look, apparently I have a soft spot for pit bulls, and
Hmm.
because I've interacted with them personally. I've never come across any kind of violent behavior. I can accept statistically if yes, pit bulls are more likely than any other dog to attack, God forbid, kids, people in general, just be very violent. So like I accept that, that's fine. I just like I'm a dog lover, so I just it was that was more or less what it was. It wasn't anything beyond that. It was just like okay.
Just trying
But
to
no,
find
I
some
mean
like some I guess meeting ground between like Pitbull lover and Michael Vick, essentially.
I mean it's fine. I mean it's just like people have their own points of view about things, and like fuck, my own personal experience isn't the end all be all, but I just at the end of the day I like to argue, and I love dogs. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Right. I want to just rewind back to the Oscar argument. Then we can talk a little bit about sports here. Look, I said it months ago when I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once that you're either going to love the movie or you're going to hate it. And there's a couple of instances where probably when you're watching this film that you both love it and hate it. So I don't really like. I'm not really like upset that obviously it's getting like a big following and big push with like the Academy Awards and whatnot. Obviously, there's the other issue that because it's a majority Asian cast, they're really clamping on to that movie to be successful, so that way no one can call them out for Oscar's so white again. It's like none of the people of color have won it again, so that's another extra push for that film. But it's just weird how internally all of these people are saying that Tom Cruise in Top Gun really saved our ass last year. He really saved Hollywood, but that's pretty much like everyone's, at least as far as like domestically, that's everyone's favorite movie from last year. But there's no way in hell they're going to allow that kind of movie to get the accreditation that they probably should deserve, because I mean that would have to say that this is a whole combination of everything we've done in Hollywood for essentially the last 10 years that we're going to continue to do over the next couple of years. Because I'm not sure if you guys heard this story, it just got posted on Bounding a few days ago, but California is now proposing to withhold tax credits from Hollywood productions if they don't have enough diversity in front and behind the camera, that they will lose out on tax credit funding from the state of California. This came right from the governor's office, Gavin Newsom, and a lot of the progressives out there in California who have run our state completely into the ground. This is absolutely sad what it's become, but California voted to pass SB 485, which revises the state's film tax credit legislation to introduce a new credit, which will only be given if the project is provided a diversity work plan that includes goals to broadly reflect California's population. So essentially, what they're saying is that in order for the movies to get, or movies or television shows to get the proper credits and the proper tax breaks, you have to reflect California's diversity. Now, in California, based on the numbers that I saw, you have like 41% whites in California. It's about 40% Hispanics in California. Blacks are about 6%, Asians about 15. Then you have like obviously your other categories somewhere within there. So this whole thing of we want less white people to be in films because that doesn't reflect our society. So what you're saying is that you probably should have more white people in the television and the movies than you currently have, because as we've shown over the last few years, you guys have been overcompensating and overrepresenting a lot of other ethnic groups in a way to kind of fight, this the diversity quotas from the studios and diversity quotas, whether it's from GLAAD and other organizations. So California, which is the home for a lot of these Hollywood productions, they're saying, hey, look, if you're not going to get behind our woke agenda here, then we're going to start punishing you guys financially. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some other states that try to copycat this legislation here. But what do you think about the whole? Yeah, let's just incentivize people to make things even more progressive than they already are, because why not?
Well, it's like it's the state is deciding what art gets made. By
Mm-hmm.
kind of dictating tax credits now, it's sort of like a Soviet system of, this is acceptable art and this isn't, and the state is the censor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we're not quite there yet, but it's getting dangerously close to, you know, it's a danger to creativity, to artists in general, to people that want to have a dissenting voice, to those in power. I mean, you could go
Mm-hmm.
down the list. This is not good for creativity. It's not good for anybody. So this is a bad idea, and it's a bunch of ideologues pushing their fucking bullshit ideology to basically, project their politics. It's just
Yeah.
complete nonsense.
Well, I remember when in the early days of Hollywood, the moguls got together and set up the Hayes office, in part to stop the federal government, in this case, from trying to take over the film industry and dictating what they could or could not show, what they could or could not produce. What's to prevent these film companies to go to perhaps more friendly areas that don't require all of these? You always have Georgia, you have Canada, although Canada's probably going to also include this as well. You could always flee to Italy and was it Cinecittà, the studios there. Don't know if you can go to Pinewood in the UK. Nothing holds them in California. So if they want to clamp down and just say, okay, you need a certain number of white people in front of and behind the camera, you need a certain number of Hispanics, Asians, all that. Well, good luck in trying to find them. I mean, you're going to still have to hire people for their skills. So if you can find
No, you don't.
the
Not these days.
well, in theory, if you want to find I guess a Filipino art director, if you
In a
want to,
wheelchair,
yes,
who has
well,
AIDS.
well, if you like, if you want to do that, that's your choice, but that's always going to increase your budget because you're going to have to search for the specific person. It's not really opening up, in my opinion, it's not opening up the field to more women, although there's a strong chance that a woman will win best cinematography for the first time ever. So I don't know if it opens it up to the idea that you'll be hiring more people from different backgrounds. I think it's just probably going to cost more to find them, hire them, potentially train them, because I don't know. I mean, the world doesn't really have a lot of black female cinematographers. It'd be good if there were more, but hopefully they would be hired for their skill versus the fact that they are black and female.
That's all we're going for. We're going for window dressing cinema now. It's like your movie. It doesn't matter if your movie's good because these movies and TV shows are not good at all. But it's like you just have to have the right progressive. Know those little old like bean counters that they would let the little kids play with, like at the dentist office, or it would just like move it from like one side to another. You got to make sure that you have the right colors on one side of the aisle, or else somehow your content is bigoted. Now that's what we're doing with movie and cinema. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. I'll save this for tomorrow. But have you guys seen the new April O'Neil and the whole controversy about the upcoming Ninja Turtles animated thing?
I've seen bits.
It.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen bits.
Yeah, so long story short, they turned April into a fat black woman, and now people are trying to cope online saying that, oh no, she's always been fat and black, and then they've been showing like this picture of like this white lady who at best is like biracial, but is clearly not a black woman, and they're trying to use that.
I saw Cassie making fun of somebody on Twitter saying like, "What? You're not happy with her, like April O'Neil has a fat ass?"
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I even saw one poster earlier today that says, "Is April O'Neil behind this fat black woman?" Because I don't see her. So yeah, we'll get into that in more in detail. But this is what we're good now. Alex said all of our action heroes are going to be fat black women in the next 10 years because we're dealing with a generation who I can't watch television and movies unless I see myself on screen. So now we're putting these people on the screen, and we wonder why no one's buying tickets. So,
well, I imagine that when they have the live, this is an animated version, right?
Yeah.
When they have the live action version, maybe April will lose weight and be played by Laverne Cox. That way, you would have you'd have a black transgender woman playing this part. Even though Laverne Cox was probably like 40 years too old to play the part, but hey,
like I said, we don't have standards anymore. The standards have been thrown completely out of the window.
And come on, if you could have a black Anne Boleyn, why can't you have a black April? That's all I'm saying.
A black transgender 50-year-old April with the Ninja Turtles. Why not? Because you've already perverted exactly everything at this point in time. Yeah, I mean, there's the other one too. Shout out to our buddy Mongo Slade who's joining us here. This is why one should be against tax credits for anything in the reward system. I say that too, and Georgia here in this state has made a massive mistake kind of opening its doors to Hollywood over the last 15, 20 years. Because not only what happened was it's like, hey, well, it's too expensive to do movies in California, so let's make it cheap for them to do movies in Georgia. So then the entire industry came to Georgia, and then now they're doing the same terrible content over here, but they've also flipped the politics of the state too, which is a massive backfire. And I hate it even when like Republicans are like, oh yeah, look at how much cheaper it is to do business here. We're attracting all the business. It's like, no, you're turning your state slowly into California. That's what happens in Georgia. That's what's happening in Arizona. That's what's going to happen in Texas in a few years. It's like all you're doing is flipping your states by inviting in the same people who hated you to begin with. So maybe
well, I'm confused. I'm confused. I thought everyone stopped making films in Georgia because of that heartbeat law.
No, that's what they said, but I mean, I don't know if you know this, Rick, but these people are full of shit. So it turns out they didn't do that at all. So I know, shocker, right?
I know. Well, I mean, they need Georgia needs to have that film industry so we could have more Medea films.
Yeah,
that's the real MCU. That's the real MCU.
That's another little story that's been popping around. Apparently, there's someone selling the majority stake in BET, so now people are like begging Tyler Perry to buy BET so that we can get more Tyler Perry productions on the BET network. So I was like, okay, great. It's like, look, I respect the hustle. I get it. You used to be homeless in your car in New Orleans and all that good stuff, but it's like content's just terrible, dude. Like I don't know.
And I'm sorry, but like. I don't remember if this was off air or on air, so I apologize if I'm throwing C.S. Johnson under the bus right now. But her saying that Tyler Perry is like based or cool in some way, I'm just like, in what world? Like he's been like the butt of even in Hollywood been the butt of jokes for like years. So like, and whatever, if he's profitable, like he makes money, good for him. That's great. but like he will always be somebody I make fun of. Like,
Yeah, I will say this about Tyler Perry: he has proven to be more charitable, especially like locally, like in the community, than some other celebrities. So I guess he'll have a leg up just as far as like that goes. That he does go out of his way to help people. So I won't
yeah.
completely bury him, but no, I wouldn't go as far to call him based either. Let's slow down just a little bit.
And maybe she didn't say that. Maybe that's just me remembering it wrong. So please, so if
No,
that's not the case, please, like that's just me
I think
remembering it wrong.
either it's a Mandela effect, or I also remember her saying something to that effect.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing I remember her saying is just wanting to kill Ezra Miller for like 8 straight months. So I mean, that's the only thing that sticks in my mind when
Okay.
anytime Johnson talks. And then, of course, before we get to our first movie review here, I want to talk about a little MCU news because Ant-Man and the Wasp is on pace to be the worst performing MCU film in quite some time. It's been out for 3 weeks now, and it still hasn't even passed the 450 mark. If you look right here, this is the updated numbers as of today. It's still only at $420 million worldwide, which means that, honestly, this film hasn't even broken even versus the production and the marketing costs. And if this stays like this, like if it barely hits $500 million, in all honesty, you're probably looking at a film that's maybe going to lose what, 200 million, 250 before they start moving some of the numbers around to figure out how they're going to mask this whole disaster. But this is bad. Like this is pretty bad. I'm trying to think, like, how much did the first Ant-Man make? 'Cause I think the first Ant-Man did right around this amount for its original release, if I'm not mistaken. It was no, actually, the first Ant-Man actually did more than this. The first Ant-Man did $519 million worldwide. That was in 2015. This one's at 420 million worldwide as of right now. It's already been taken out of at least half the theaters, and it's going to be taken out of more because you got 3 new movies coming out this week, which we'll talk about later on in the show, plus the 2 movies that are out right now. So it's losing screens rapidly. Theaters are not holding on to it. So yeah, this one might not even make $500 million when it's all said and done, and that would be about 250 less than Thor, which is the worst performing last year. I think it might be the worst performing movie since Shang-Chi, which was kind of that weird period where we were still getting out of the pandemic, so people try to give that one a little bit of a pass. But this one's doing pretty awful, and for all the hype around Jonathan Majors, who we'll talk about here in a second, all the hype around Kang and a Phase 5 guys and all this other stuff, like it's almost, I mean, I don't say it's almost panic time. It's definitely panic time for the MCU. Rob, what is your thoughts on this film just epically flopping?
Well, I think it's weird because there's movie advertising has been very strange the last couple of years. I feel like some movies we get advertised to us to death. And the
Yeah.
Ant-Man movie was one of them. There's other movies like a movie we're about to review called what is it, Operation Fortune. It got almost no play. Like people didn't even know it existed, and it's a Guy
Yep.
Ritchie movie. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that going on with how movies are sold to audiences, but it doesn't seem like there was a very big audience for a third Ant-Man movie almost 10 years after the first one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So hopefully they learn from it and they make less shitty movies, but I don't think they will. They're not going to learn from it.
I mean, they already turning around. Guardians is coming up here in like 2 months, so that will be Guardians 3, and then Captain Marvel 3 has already been pushed back about what, 4 months to November. So that one's now squeezed between Dune 2 and the Hunger Games prequel. So yeah, that one's probably gonna bomb massively as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ant-Man is what, second or third tier MCU. Kang, you're not going to know who
I
he
wouldn't even
is.
call him. I wouldn't even call him second tier. Probably third tier, for
Yeah,
being honest.
yeah, second or third tier. Kang the Conqueror, that's not going to resonate. Thanos barely resonated, and that's because they actually took the time to build him up as a threat. Here, it's like, oh, here's your new villain. Enjoy, and we're not going to know. So of course it's losing more and more screens. When I tried to get people to go, Gabe was the only one who was willing to go. I couldn't find anyone else interested, and no one's going to really care for Ant-Man the character. And bless Paul Rudd, but he's not going to open a film. I mean, what films has he opened? what film can we say? Oh yes, oh Paul Rudd is in it, so we're gonna rush out.
Yeah.
This is nothing against him. I like him as a person, or at least as a
Mhm.
as an actor. So yeah, it's going to be losing more and more screens. It's not going to last much longer, and they're not going to learn because they've got Guardians 3, and they can rely on Chris Pratt, the person who is probably uh, as close to a name star that you can find, who probably is not completely in sync with their worldview. So, I mean that's what they've got. So they expect Guardians 3 to lift them up. But if it's the same, if it's similar to Guardians 2, it's going to be a nightmare. And we've got the Marvels. So yeah, the Marvels. Trust me. If I have to choose, I'm choosing Dune Part Two. I'm not choosing the Hunger Games prequel because I never liked that series, but that has probably more name recognition than Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel or Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
No
And
one's
then
gonna
the
know who
black
she
chick,
is.
whoever her name is.
It's Rambo,
Yeah.
Rambo, something
Yeah.
Rambo.
You remember it better than I do, so that's all I have to say.
No, I watch a lot of videos.
I still have yet to see the first the what is it, Captain Marvel?
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
Brie Larson movie? Yeah, I still haven't seen it.
You're
I saw
literally
that.
not missing anything at
Yeah,
all.
I actually saw that with my Democratic Socialist friend, uh,
Connie.
who who said that even she thought it was a little too much with that, girl power message.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think we talked about this last night. It was like not last week, but a couple weeks ago with Tom Connors over at Midnight's Edge. It's like nobody likes Brie Larson. Like she's not a pleasant person to be around, like at all. And it's not just like a political thing because even people who have worked with her, who are close to her, do not like her. Like she's just not a good person to be around. It is reflected on kind of like the way they've been trying to build her up for like a number of years. Like I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago there was talks about she was going to be the new big superhero to lead the MCU into the future, right? That everyone was going to love her. She was going to be the new Iron Man. And then the first Captain Marvel came out, and they had to drag that film across the finish line by changing all the rules on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and all these sites so that no one can give that movie a bad review because no one liked her as an actress. And since then, they've completely backed off of their idea of handing her the keys to the franchise. So now she's been relegated to a co-star in her own sequel, and slowly trying to like phase her out because like yeah, nobody likes her like, at all. And you're going to base your future off of her, or in worst place, yeah, Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, another character that nobody has liked, the character you guys have dragged across the finish line, trying to make it seem like she's more popular than she really is. She's not. It's like you guys don't have anything at all good going for you right now. You're wondering why this shit is failing.
Yeah, and Kamala Khan originates from the television series. So you're relying on having a film with a character that many people probably have never actually seen or have
Yeah.
heard of.
But that's been the deal now for like the last few movies. Like each movie has now had like a Disney Plus show attached to it. Like you had to watch WandaVision to understand what was it Doctor Strange 2. You have to
Mhm.
watch Loki to understand the Ant-Man 3. And then they're pretty sure they're doing like Secret Wars. That's supposed to lead up to I think Captain America 4, which comes out next year as well. So they're expecting you to now watch the Disney Plus TV shows to understand what the movies are setting up now.
But that's the problem. I mean, you rely on name recognition with the MCU. Whatever the flaws of the others, people knew who Captain America was, and they knew who. Well, no, not Iron Man, but Iron Man that became known because of the film.
Yeah.
So they knew those. They knew Spider Man. They're not going to know Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. They're not going to remember Captain Marvel. I don't even know how long that was, and so you're relying on trying to get people to go watch a film, and that of people that are characters that you probably don't know and have never seen, and then add to that you're going to release it a week after the sequel to one of the biggest hits of what, last year or the year prior,
Yeah.
that has name recognition, and you're releasing it the week before the prequel to a series that also has name recognition, especially considering that Jennifer Lawrence was the first female action hero in the cinema in history, in cinematic history. So you've got that. So how are you how are you going to try to convince people to watch the Marvels and say, yeah, don't watch the sequel to like one of the biggest films of the past few years, and don't watch it. Don't watch that instead of watching the prequel to a series that most of you probably read, when you were in middle or high school. To me, it doesn't make much sense. But hey, I'm sure that Brie Larson and Kamala Khan and Captain Rambo will be able to conquer the screen. Yeah, they're going to take down House Atreides. What can I tell you?
I don't know. Like this whole thing is just dying on the vine here, but no, this is what they base their entire future on. So I don't know. You figure that there has to be like a tap out point at this point. Like you can't keep doing phase 6, phase 7, phase 8. Like guys, there's diminishing returns now. People are getting sick of this. Like you need to wrap this shit up. You probably should have wrapped it up 4 years ago when you kind of had everything on a nice little bow. But yeah, you're not just going to be able to keep shelling people out to these subpar ass superhero movies.
But I thought they did have that plan. Wasn't that like didn't they already announce films long into the future? Like,
Well, we're in phase 5 now, and they've already announced phase 6 on top of phase 5. So it's like we have movies that are already announced between now to 2026 at the moment, and there's still going to be some more that they're going to add. And then you have to think with all the reshoots that are happening, because apparently that's the big reason why the Marvels has been pushed back, because test audiences hated the movie, and now they have to reshoot a lot of it again, just like they did with Ant-Man. We saw what happened with Ant-Man when they reshot that. So
well,
this is the plan.
You're going to have a feature film centered around your generation's Gene Kelly. I mean, how are you going to deny Harry Styles his star-making turn as what is it, Thanos' brother, Eros? How are you going to deny us that great vision? Honestly, come on.
Do you know the hubris that it takes to be like, hey, we're gonna like sell C and D list Marvel roster characters to the audience with their own movies, well past Iron Man and Captain America and the Incredible Hulk and the actual characters people come to the movies to see that are well past their expiration date at this point. And so it's like, just stop doing this, please. It's an insult to people who love movies to try to pair them up with TV shows. I can't tell you how embarrassing that is. Like, not to mention the people that are fans of this shit, I feel really sorry for. So that's all I got.
Well, keep it in mind.
You're sounding too much like Marty Scorsese there.
Yeah, well, he was right, wasn't he?
Well, keep in mind when like people like our old friend was marking out about the fact that Disney was buying Fox. That was like 7 years ago when that whole thing happened. The reason why people were all excited is like, oh, now we get to see the X-Men and the Marvel movies, and that's going to be the number one draw. I can't wait to see Hulk fight Wolverine in the movie. It's like, well, it's been 7 years. Have you gotten that yet? No. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get Captain America 4 with a black Captain America. You're going to get the Thunderbolts with a bunch of superheroes you've never heard of in your entire life. And hey, maybe if you guys are lucky, in 2 years you'll get a female Blade movie. That's what you really wanted, right?
And you'll get John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, which caused the audience to start laughing in the theater I went to. So I don't know what that tells you.
Well, and then they brutally killed him off too. So it's like, yeah, fuck you. And now they're going to, but don't worry, in a few months, they're going to announce that they're going to race swap all of the Fantastic Four, and then there'll be a brand new Fantastic Four movie you'll get to look forward to in 3 years as well. So,
well, sorry, they already did that when they cast Jessica Alba as the Invisible Woman. But nobody seemed to mind. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, except Richard Roper was right. If you're going to cast Jessica Alba, you should make her the Visible Woman, not the Invisible Woman.
Well, how about this? Speaking of god awful Fantastic Four movies, let's move over to the guy who starred in that movie, Michael B. Jordan, because he also directed this movie Creed here too. So there's a lot of questionable decisions that went into this film before we got to this point. It was the fact that before production started, they decided, hey, Sylvester Stallone, we don't need you anymore. We got this new Creed. He's gonna be our new Rocky. We don't need you. So we're gonna essentially blacklist you out of your own franchise because, well, you don't own the rights and we do. So fuck you. So that was a whole fallout that happened behind the scenes. And then very quietly, they even like try to like front load this, but they announced, hey, by the way, Michael B. Jordan is going to be directing this movie. And you're like, he hasn't had like a directing credit like in his life. Like he's never directed like a TV show, a short, anything that makes you think that he has any kind of directing chops whatsoever. But they just gave him this role based on, it's like, well, he's already starting. Let's see if he can get direct too. It's like, okay, I guess that's a smart decision on your behalf. At least you hope so. Then, of course, no. The other thing that MGM was really hoping was happening is that they knew Jonathan Majors was going to be in this movie. They were hoping that they can piggyback off of the tremendous heat that Ant-Man 3 was supposed to generate for audiences, because they've been pushing this guy so hard in the MCU, talking about he's going to do great things, and we're building the entire next Avengers movie around him and all of this stuff. That, hey, all these people are going to go out and see Jonathan Majors. He's going to be a made star by the time this film came out, and not exactly the way that it planned out as well. So all the plans about this movie beforehand just kind of blew up in their face a little bit. Now, of course, it was successful in its first week at the box office. There's still some money that needs to be made here before we can truly call it a success, but it did better than a lot of people were expecting it to, at least for the front end so far of this. But before we get into this film, like the getting rid of Sylvester Stallone, putting Michael B. Jordan as a director, trying to bank on the hype of Jonathan Majors, like what was your thoughts on just kind of like the marketing and the setup of this whole film? Because it seemed like everything was ass backwards up until we got to this point, right, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't. There's a couple of things. Like, I don't think Jonathan Majors is necessarily bad in this movie. I just don't
Yep.
think he's given a whole lot to do. And look, I saw the first Creed movie on Friday night. I saw
Mm-hmm.
Creed 2 the basically 2 hours before I went to see Creed 3 on Sunday. So I saw all three movies in a very short amount of time. And I will say this, the parts that work with these movies is Sylvester Stallone. He's the actual legitimacy that is given to these movies that allows them to kind of run on that believable world that they're trying to create. Without him and Michael B, you just saying this right now, I just thought of the first time, like, oh, he's supposed to be Rocky, and that makes sense with like what happens in the story. How like
Mm-hmm.
he's like his gym is like, sponsoring that, like uh, the
The fight,
Mexican
yeah, yeah.
guy. Yeah, exactly. So it was like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. It does not come up at all in the movie. Like Michael B. Jordan, I, I think like he slowly becomes kind of that heavyweight fighter, but he does not have the persona. He does not have the presence of, Sylvester Stallone's Rocky character. So I think that there were a lot of decisions behind the scenes that made the movie a lot less effective than it could have been. Certainly, if Sylvester Stallone was involved. We saw this to some degree with the Buzz Lightyear movie last year, because it had no connection to Toy Story. So
Yeah.
and that had issues. I mean, I think this will probably do better at the box office than that did. But I did think it was an issue not having Stallone involved.
Go ahead, Rick.
Oh well, just looking it up, Michael B. Jordan is 36, and it's interesting that they would give him such a large, basically a large film as his very first feature film.
Yeah.
And when I was watching it, I watched it earlier today. All I kept thinking is that he's very enamored of what he could do visually, but not all that interested in what the story is. Removing Sylvester Stallone, I mean, I don't think he was as missed, although there were a couple of points when I thought he should have been there, and it would have made more sense if he was.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what I was watching, I didn't. I saw Creed when it came out. And I don't remember it, and I tried to watch Creed 2, but I just really did not have the time to. All I kept thinking is, I've seen this movie before, and without giving too much away, it's like watching Rocky 4. I mean, that was the idea that I got. I think that as a director, he was more enamored of the visuals than he was of the story, and that's a concern for me. And we'll talk about that later, I guess. I'm just puzzled as to why they decided to give him this as his first feature film. This seems like a very strange project to give a complete novice, just because he did this in front of, he's the star or the director. He's not Laurence Olivier. He can't, he's not in a position to direct himself that well. And as for Jonathan Majors, it's interesting, and I know we'll talk about this later on when we do the Operation Fortune. You Here you have someone whom you're trying to build up as this next big star, Jonathan Majors, with Kang, with Creed, and with Devotion also. And we're going to talk about a film that stars someone that was built up as this next big star, but who ultimately did not become the next big star.
Yeah.
But well, again, we'll talk about
So
that later.
couple of interesting notes here. This film, The Creed 3, was written not by Ryan Coogler, but by Keenan Coogler, who I believe is his brother, and was also co-written by Zach Bain, who wrote last year's King Richard, the movie that Chris Rock got slapped for. And so that was the kind of the setup here, that I guess visually they basically were going to use Michael B. Jordan as a traffic guard based on the story, but to me, and as we'll talk about here, the story itself, as we said, is kind of the weakest part of this whole thing, because they're really trying to stretch. They're trying to build a world that's supposed to be realistic to like modern times, right? It's not supposed to be that over the top. Oh, we have Rocky versus Hulk Hogan and Rocky versus Drago, and kind of that over the top sense it was played in back in like the 80s. They're trying to be like more grounded and more realistic with this, but it's like there's a lot of things that wouldn't happen like in reality whatsoever. I guess we could talk about the setup here for this film. So the Creed 3 starts off, I guess, a few years after the second one, where now Creed Adonis is retiring from the game because he has too many injuries and whatnot. So they're trying to play like, oh, he's now this old beat up veteran and champion, but he's still good enough to be the champ. But it's like he can't do it like anymore, which is kind of a weird arc to do with Michael B. Jordan, considering the fact that this whole thing started with him being this amateur who found out that he was the father of Apollo Creed. So he got, kind of a big push based on his name. So he was like this new young thing. And now in the course of like a few years, he's like this beaten down, like old man. But we'll get to some of the story inconsistencies there. But he retires. Now he's managing and promoting other fighters and whatnot. An old buddy of his from when he was a teenager finally gets out of jail. Guy played by Jonathan Majors, I believe his name is Dame in the film. And essentially, they were out in LA when Adonis was a teen. He beat up a guy. It was this old foster parent. He was getting jumped. Majors pulled out a gun. He gets arrested. Creed ran away. And then because he had priors, he did like 18 years in prison. So now he's out. He's like, hey, look, I still have dreams of being, a champion. So it's like, make me a champion. He's like, dude, you've been in jail for like 18 years. Like, you don't have like any professional fights whatsoever. I can't just give you a title shot, right? And the movie attempts to try to make sense of this by saying that, oh, well, Drago was supposed to get the title shot, but I mean, that fell apart because he got hurt. And then somehow we squeezed in this guy, like I said, no professional record whatsoever. Sure, he was a Golden Glove boxer 18 years ago, but that was 18 years ago. There's no way in hell that any state commission, even California, as corrupt as it possibly is, that they would allow that they would allow a guy literally fresh out of jail with no professional record to face a guy who's arguably the number one contender in boxing in his weight division. That would never happen. They were never, like, let's put it this way. If I did 18 years in jail and I decided I wanted to be an MMA fighter, I'm not going to get a fight against John Jones at Las Vegas on my first fight night. That's never going to happen. But that's the way they set it up here, like in this film. There's a lot of logical errors with this movie. What's the one that jumps out with you? I'll start with Rob.
I mean, the whole thing, like the simplicity of the plot setup is it's such a fantasy. It's such a, this world revolves around Creed and his drama, because this whole thing is based on his guilt. like his whole guilt for like, yeah, I got to help out this guy because, you know, we were friends back in the day and, you know, I left him high and dry and he went to jail and I didn't. And like, all, you know, it's basically about his guilt. So,
Yeah.
but the actual, the realities of this shit playing out is so far-fetched and so ridiculous, so contrived for a certain type of setup, or excuse me, a certain type of payoff for, you know, the end
Yep.
of the movie. And so it's just, you know, to me, it's just very lazy writing. It's bad script writing. It's bad plot detail, and just kind of hoping the audience doesn't notice too much.
Yep. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, yeah, no, that was one of the big things that struck me, that after somebody goes all Tanya Harding on Drago, because they literally go and like they smash his hands and get him into like they sucker punch him or just hit him in the
Yeah.
back. Like they literally, I thought, are they stealing this from I Tanya? Like this plot point, and then you've got this guy who Diamond Dane who or Diamond Damien who went to prison in place of Adonis. I'm thinking, yeah, you're borrowing from the Biggie Small story, Notorious, because that's basically the same thing that happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody went to jail for him, and then he became a big time rapper. That was a big problem for me. And then the build up with that Showtime presentation, like making it sound like, oh, you know, we're gonna give this guy a shot. I'm like, this is nonsense. There is no way. And this I wrote this down in my notes. There is no way that people would pay to see Ortiz, I think that was a boxer, fight some unknown. No, no,
In
they're
the
not
main
going to.
event.
Yes.
Also, the guy like Anderson or whatever, Dame Anderson,
Yeah.
he's like a heavyweight. He's a heavyweight dude. That other guy, the Mexican dude, was definitely not.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like there's so many of these guys. Even like Michael B. Jordan, like he's portrayed as like a heavyweight. It's like, dude, in reality, you would be a very small like heavyweight. Like you would
Yeah.
have to go down a weight class. Like in today's like heavyweight boxers, you look at guys like Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, who are like all like 6'5", 6'6" dudes who are like 240 pounds of like just like solid brick. It's like Michael B. Jordan's a very, very small. Like he would probably be more realistically maybe a middleweight if he had to like cut down somewhere in between there. There's no way that he would be competing at heavyweight. And I was thinking the same thing about the actors in this movie. It's like this is a heavyweight bout. It's like you guys are stretching reality just a little bit there.
No, I thought it was just ridiculous to think that people would pay and go to see this big fight, because the guy's a complete unknown. This isn't like a Rocky situation, because they were trying to make that comparison. Oh, it's just, remember, just like Apollo Creed, they got Rocky to fill in. Yeah, but the reason they did that was because it was supposed to be like a big bicentennial, and Apollo liked the fact that he was the Italian stallion, and you know it was going to be a big show. But this is not the same thing, because there it was of course, as the times have changed, it was going to be not, it wasn't going to be a pay-per-view, it wasn't going to be sponsored by a major casino. All of this was, it's an absurdity, it's an absolute absurdity. And just I think the massive size of Jonathan Majors compared to Guzman. I mean, I was thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think Canelo, who makes a cameo in this, is going to be taking him on, because there's obviously a massive weight and
Yeah.
probably height difference. It's such a ridiculous concept to think. I don't understand. I guess I thought they could get away with it. My one problem that I don't think anyone's mentioned is that when does Adonis have like this sort of spidey sense, like where he can he knows what punch is going to come. You notice the camera starts moving slowly, and you kind
Mhm.
of almost can see where the punch is going to land. I'm thinking, is he like Miles Morales from Spider-Man? I mean, this is such a
Well, hold on to that point because that will come into play when we talk about the ending here. Because there is something that
yeah,
he revealed to his influences for the way that the last fight happened. But we'll save that for a bit
yeah.
here.
That,
But
that was
yeah,
so much that was unbelievable.
Yeah, so the whole thing, like the best comparison that I can play is that there's a guy in the UFC called Alex Pereira. He's currently the middleweight champion of the UFC. Now, this guy had a very extensive kickboxing career, kickboxing record, but he had never fought in MMA before. So he had to leave kickboxing in last couple of years and transition over to MMA, where in the UFC brought him in because he had a record of beating the champion, essentially Israel Adesanya. He beat him in kickboxing, but this is MMA now. But it's like, okay, can he adapt to the sport? So they had him fight 3 guys leading up to before he actually got the title shot, right? So if this is a story that they were trying to portray in this movie, they should have had Majors at least fight a couple of named boxers, or at least build up a small enough portion size to where it would be believable when he actually moved up to becoming fighting for a championship, because at least he would have like some feats on his record that people would be like, oh yeah, this guy really is that good. But it's like they put him right in the title picture right out of the gate, like basically right off of the street. So then when he wins the belt, we're supposed to treat him as if he's the heavyweight champion in the world, especially when we get to the ending. I was like, this dude had like one fight. He's literally beat one guy his entire career. He's treating him like, oh, he's the big bad heavyweight champion of the world. And it's like, you guys fast forwarded through so much plot and character development there by making that decision, and that stuff like that's what really hurts the movie.
I'm sorry, in Rocky 3, at least they had enough sense to make Clubber Lang, Mr. T character, have that montage where he is building a career and he is taking on more and more rivals to get to that championship against Rocky. Here, it's like, okay, we're just gonna take your sparring partner, the guy who was the sparring partner, and you're going to make you the main event of a preview Las Vegas Super Show. Okay.
Yeah, and what they do is they take all those sparring partners the Mexican dude was fighting, and like, okay, we're running out of sparring partners, so we got to throw Jonathan Majors in here, who's gonna like later absolutely annihilate him in a fight. You know what I mean? So and here's the other thing too is this movie feels like a Jonathan Majors movie. It doesn't feel like a Michael B. Jordan movie. He feels like a secondary character up until like I think like the third act. You know what I mean? Until it's like, oh, I've got to take care of business. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but he feels like he's taking a back seat to Jonathan Majors, which I mean makes sense if he's directing, but he should also be the protagonist in his own story, right? Like that's what's really bizarre to me as well. But that's kind of what I meant about like this whole movie is just is Adonis Creed's drama just swirling, the whole like this guy coming back from his past and being so dominant and like just basically challenging him and calling him a fake tough guy and like all this stuff. It's so like out of like some Freudian subconscious. So that's
a bit of Clubber Lang there.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's very badly plotted out story,
especially when you're, like I said, those movies in a lot of instances were more like campy and it's like more over the top in its presentation. Well, this one's trying to be like more grounded in reality. Like this is what actually happens in the boxing world. Like they get like Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman and all these like guys, all these like real like boxing associated guys to bring into this world, so it could be like more realistic. But it's like you're not doing that with your story at all. It's like this will work if it was something that was more campy and over the top. So it's like the tone of this film has a lot of issues on that regard. Now, I will say this: Jonathan Majors, who's a guy who, when we did Ant-Man last week, kind of crapped on him because it's like, yeah, there's so much hype about this guy, but it's like he's not really living up to the hype, especially with the box office numbers that are being sprouted out with the movies he's attached to. But so far, like out of the 2 movies we've seen him in, this is the best movie performance I've seen him in so far this year. He's way better in this film than he is in the Ant-Man movie, because like I said, his character motivations like make sense. Like the dude lost 18 years of his life. His whole dream was being, a boxer. His friend, who was kind of like a little brother to him, kind of took over his role, took over his mantle. He feels like that, he stole his life and whatnot. So now he's just out for revenge and damn anyone who steps in his way. I thought his character motivation, at least on that front, made sense. Obviously, he worked very hard to get into physical shape, and in this movie and and then the way that he was portrayed, I liked him in this one far more than I liked him in the other one. I think you even said this, Rob, that Tessa Thompson was another person who we typically don't like in a lot of movies that she's in, but she's a lot better in this film than I've seen her in many other ones. So I mean, the acting wise, this movie isn't really that bad. It's just the shortfalls in the story that hurt it. But what did you think of Majors in this film?
I actually thought Jonathan Majors, just in terms of his acting ability and his performance, was pretty good. You know, he's not given a whole lot to do. You know what I mean? You have the first part of the movie where he's being introduced to the audience and the different characters in Adonis Creed's life, and then there's the second half where he's outwardly hostile and defensive and kind of a brash asshole, very ego driven, very much like, I'm here, you have to deal with me kind of thing. So I think that he actually does give a pretty good performance. I just wish there was, I wish his character had more depth to him. I wish he had more to do. That's kind of the disappointing aspect of him being involved with this movie, is that you can kind of glean something, something of a personality there, but I don't think he's given enough. He's not given enough, like, with his character to do necessarily.
Yeah,
I think he was better than the material. I think that he did really the best he could with what he was given, and I think that he. I mean, I saw him, and I think maybe one or both of you saw him in Devotion. I thought that was a better performance than this. But again, I think that he really worked at trying to make this into this villain whom we are supposed to somewhat sympathize with, given the fact that he's been locked up and has endured a great deal, and now thinks that he's owed something by Adonis. But I wasn't overwhelmed, although just looking up both Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors, I'm struggling with the idea that they are both the exact same height. They're both supposed to be 6 feet tall. I never got the sense that Jonathan Majors was the same size. Maybe because he's much more muscular, but I think it seems that it just doesn't seem like a very good comparison. But again, when it comes to his performance, I think he did the best he could. It's not a great part for any person to play. You get like a combination Clubber Lang and Drago from the Rock movies, and yeah, that's pretty much all you have. And yeah, bless him for doing what he could. But I wasn't overwhelmed with this performance.
fair enough. And then I want to ask you guys this because I picked up on it when I was watching this film. So in the movie, Creed has a young deaf daughter who was built up in the second film. I think she was a baby in the second one. And there was like, oh, yeah, she's going to have the same ear condition that her mother did. So she's a little bit older in this one because it takes place years older. And I was thinking to myself, because I'm looking ahead while I'm watching this movie, and it's like, okay, great. So that little girl is going to be the next Rocky in a few years. Like, we're going to make a boxing movie about this little girl, and she's going to be deaf and she's going to be black. She's going to check off two of the check boxes in this film. And then we can also do, the LGBTQ thing as well, because that's still on the table. So if you do it years later, but she plays sort of like a big role in the film, because it's like there's a lot of like the first and second act of this movie where there's just entire scenes where people are talking in sign language, where it's like they didn't really need to talk in sign language, but they're doing it because the daughter is deaf, and that went on for a while. So it's like, are you guys excited for that movie to come out in a few years? Or did you guys? Is it just me?
Who doesn't want to see Coda meets $1 Million Baby?
Well, no, and this is somewhat personal for me because my brother's deaf, and I grew up. Actually, I learned American Sign Language before I could talk, because of living with my brother. Growing up in that familial setting. But I said the same thing to my roommate when I came home. I was like, they've got a deaf daughter, and there's scenes where they're signing to each other, and it's annoying because I know how performative it is. I know how much it's basically just being like, hey, look, we're not ableist. We care about people with disabilities, and it's fine, I guess, because it's part of Tessa Thompson's character. But again, these are all, and this is a criticism of the entire series of Creed.
Yeah.
These characters are thin. There's barely any detail to them. They exist, and a gust of wind would blow them away. And so you're trying to add depth to them through these character details that don't mean anything. They don't add up to a deeper appreciation of the material or caring about a character anymore. They're just they just feel like empty details that we're tacking on to sort of like make ourselves look good and feel good about it.
Well, I just wondered when there's that scene at the deaf class or the deaf school where that other classmate just rips up the picture for no apparent reason, and then the little girl just like punches her straight on, and we never really get a reason as to why. We never get like much of a resolution to that point. I guess just to show her aggressiveness, and then she sees the videos. I'm sure she would have seen the fights beforehand.
Well, didn't you see the reaction from like the teacher and you know what I'm saying, her parents who were like,
Yeah.
Oh,
she
yeah.
said she basically didn't start it, she just responded. And that's
Yeah.
a tough lesson for kids to learn, is that it's the person who responds, not the person who necessarily instigates. So
Yeah.
I think that's all that was. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't see why we needed that particular scene to show that she's going to be, the new, what is it, Tatiana Ali? She's
yeah,
gonna just take on, she's gonna take on the world and go into this boxing world. But of course, the father is not going to discourage her from this. In fact, you have that kind of idea that the Tessa Thompson character and the Michael B. Jordan character are going to be at odds about how to raise. I believe her name is Amara, because Adonis I think, is going to try to push her more into the boxing, and the Tessa Thompson character, and you see, I don't even remember her name, that she's going to not want to have her daughter, you know, go into girl fights. So if they're building that up for future films, well, it's not going to be particularly interesting. You're going to have this domestic drama, but hey, you're
I
going to
can't
have.
believe this made almost $60 million this weekend, because it's like
I can
I guess it's a way to kill 2 hours, but it's
I
not anything more than that.
I can, because people still carry an affection for all of these characters from the Rocky universe, and I guess from Creed. Maybe the first Creed was very popular. I can't speak for the second Creed, so people really enjoy these types of movies. It's not for me to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Oh, real quick, Rob, did you mention if your brother was older or younger?
No, I didn't, because it's none
Oh,
of your business. No,
well,
I'm just kidding. I'm just no. He's 2 years older. Yeah.
he's older. Oh, okay, all right. I'm so used to you speaking to me like that. It's like, I'm not going to take it personal, but I don't know if that was done to kind of show, oh, we have a deaf person here. It's positive, I guess. I mean, I have no way of knowing if that was a plot, because again, I never saw Creed 2, so if
You
this
don't
was
need to.
introduced, if
It's
that
it's Michael B. Jordan is moping around for like half the movie because his daddy got killed by Drago, and his son is threatening him now. And
but
God,
now
I'm
they're
sorry, that the
besties.
second one was terrible, and then of course they got me like choked up at the end when he
Yeah,
goes to see his
so
son.
Rick
I hate
Rick
you.
probably had no idea then. So the big dude that he was training with for the fight, that was supposed to be Drago's son in the movie.
Oh, no! I knew
Okay.
enough from advertisements and how things go around. So I knew, and I know that Drago Junior pops up in this one as well, because they mention
Mhm.
it. But again, it's nothing. Nothing that, oh wow, we need to have this. I was just curious more about the daughter, if the daughter was deaf in the second one, because if she's just here and we're introduced to her being deaf in the third one, it's a curious detail to introduce now versus
Yeah.
in part two. That's what I was asking, if part two had
Yeah, no,
mention of it.
they teased it. There was like a whole big thing that he was freaking out that, oh, my daughter's gonna be deaf or something like that. That was in the second film. So
Oh,
yeah, you
did they
missed that
steal
one.
that from Mr. Holland's opus?
I wouldn't be shocked. But something that was stolen, and we'll talk about the ending here for a second. Now, Michael B. Jordan is the director of this film, and for the most part, all I can say is that you can tell from his directing style is very paint by numbers. Like he was basically just trying to make sure that he didn't make any major mistakes. That he was just kind of going with the flow for a lot of the things. Like there was obviously like a lot of title cards. It's like, oh, Los Angeles 2002 and like stuff like that. Like, they played that up early on and then kind of like went away from it as the film went on. So then we get to the big boxing fight. It's between Creed and Dame in the round, and it's like you see the first couple of rounds are played off like straight up boxing rounds, and then throughout the remainder of the fight up until the 12th round, it starts becoming like this. I want to say like Black Panther esque type of dream sequence that we start seeing, where it's like all of a sudden everyone in the crowd just disappears and
Oh
just
my god,
those two in the ring, and
I
and then like the backgrounds change, and it's like the weather starts changing throughout the course of it. So Michael
And
B.
they're in the
Jordan apparently,
cage.
yeah, so yeah, literally in the cage at one point. So Michael B. Jordan said this during like the press conference. I didn't notice till after I watched the movie, but apparently he was taking inspiration from anime such as Dragon Ball Z and Naruto for the whole sequence of two rivals going one on one and fighting each other towards like the end of the movie. And I was like, you probably shouldn't have said that. That's probably one thing that you probably should have left with like the DVD audio portion. Like, but that's apparently where he got his inspiration from. So, what did you think of the end sequence for the film here? Let's start with Rob now with this newfound information.
when this was happening in the theater, I was like, what the fuck is this? What is he doing? Are we on some shadow like dimension level? Like this was
Yeah.
so ridiculous. It was so unnecessary. And it's like completely divorced from the fact that like you're in a live arena and you're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by people and like it's an intense atmosphere. It's not some like stoic inner peace like plane of existence. Like it was so fucking stupid that he decided to do that. And by the way, this is something I noticed in Creed 2 as well as this movie is that like I like a lot of the the boxing choreography and the hits and stuff like that. Like I
Yeah.
like actually quite a bit a lot of that. What I don't like is it's the very weird like CGI like crowd. Like the
And
background
fireworks.
feels
Remember?
very artificial. And then in this movie it felt like that too. And then they do this stupid fucking dream sequence which basically confirms that hey, it's not really Dodger Stadium. It's just like a CGI background. Like shit like that. It's like you're gonna spend money on a production and not make it real and lived in. That's the thing that even if the old Rocky movies were over the top, those places felt real. The audience felt real.
Yeah.
Like the people cared about what was happening. This feels artificial and fake. And like your director and this is you literally chose to do this. I would be so completely embarrassed by it.
Well, no, this is what I was saying when I said that as a first time director, he was more interested in the visuals than he was in the story or in the performances because it was rather grandiose and just slipping into this kind of other world. And at one point, when the cage came down, all I could think of is, oh my God, are they doing like Hell in a Cell? I mean, what on earth are they slipping into? It was very bizarre and grandiose and farcical. But again, I think it goes to his idea of art and vision, and we're going to make something memorable, which is ironically not going to make it memorable, except in the bad way. You look at all the first four Rocky films. I hate Rocky Five, but you look at all of those, especially the first one. It felt like a real boxing match, even if it was a little over the top at times, but it felt like it was taking place in a real world. That's why in the first Rocky, audiences were literally cheering at the fight. Even though it was a movie, they were leaping to their seats and shouting "Rocky, Rocky." Here, no one's going to shout "Creed, Creed" or "Adonis, Adonis," because it looks so fake. It looks so it looks like Kang the Conqueror just slipped into the boxing movie. That's basically what it looked like. It didn't, yeah, it took me out of the completely. I mean, I already had probably checked out a while back, but I thought, why do you need to do all this? This is too you're trying to be too artsy, you're trying to be too like I keep saying, grandiose and over the top with this. Look, one of the reasons that the Rocky movies work is because it felt like it was a real fight. It felt like there were real stakes in every opportunity, in every fight that he had. Here, it didn't feel like it. I don't feel like Adonis and Diamond Damien really were that much rivals. I mean, look, the movie ended with them almost shaking hands and doing like their old hand gestures. It's just no, it was just for me, the that final fight was just more of a first time director indulging in art and trying to be as visually arresting as possible when it didn't need to be that way, and it just kind of takes you out of the movie altogether.
See, Rick, you're talking about like you're using these terms that I usually use in a positive way. You know what I mean? Because I would just insult Michael B. Jordan's ability to make things interesting in a visual way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like I would no, I think you could be grandiose and over the top and visually arresting, and he didn't do that. He made a piece of crap. So
Well, well, I
He
think
was literally going for a Goku versus Vegeta final fight in
But
that third
I
act.
mean, as someone who's not well versed in anime, I'm not going to even imagine that. And it's not a good sign when you have to try to draw inspiration from anime. Anime is understood to be over the top
but you're not
and be
making
more visualistic.
animation. You're
Exactly.
making a relatively realistic like boxing movie, or at
Yes,
least that's what it's supposed to be.
trying to keep it more grounded. It would really build up the stakes between these two supposed rivals, and it doesn't also help that at the end of the fight, you you echo the music from the first Rocky. Because the first thing I noticed is that the music is the exact same music that they use for the Rocky fights at
Mhm.
the end. And I'm going, why? I mean, you removed Rocky the character, but you're still using the music. It just for me it didn't work. And also, real quick, when Apollo's widow, when she dies, I would have thought, hey, why isn't Rocky at the funeral? This is the wife of the widow of his best friend or one of his closest friends. Why aren't you attending the service unless you're
But
hidden away somewhere?
but even and just I want to point this out, if I don't know if we're okay, you froze there momentarily. Was that Felicia Rashad, by the way?
Yeah.
From
Yes.
okay. Even her character, even her character felt somewhat legitimate, warm, like there was she was a real character. Even her, it's like she has, the death, like the plot trope of her death, and like this is serious. It's serious this time, in terms of like the fight and everything that's on the line and everything. And it's like I don't know.
Yeah, you get kind of a Mickey Apollo type situation
Yeah.
there where you're supposed to feel bad. I mean, maybe that was one of the few positive moments for me when in her stroke addled confusion, she thought she was talking to Apollo and not Adonis because she kept calling him Apollo and like, why did you leave me alone and all of this. So yeah, that was one of a few good moments for me, but
But what is
probably
this now? What is this? Is this the ninth Rocky movie, guys? Is this the ninth fucking Rocky movie? Can we
what
put it to rest,
Yeah.
please? Like the first four were pretty good. Like I can say that just as like for what they are. The
yeah.
first four are like I grew up with them. They're good. I seriously I took them for granted, especially before watching these Creed movies. These Creed movies do nothing but cannibalize those characters and those movies. They
Yeah.
use them for what they can, and they produce utter shit as an outcome. Like
But
they're not good movies at all.
the thing is that they echo the Rocky movies. They echo at least the first four. I
Yeah.
kept thinking, oh well, this is the um, uh, Diamond Damien. That's a Clubber Lang Drago type character
Yeah.
put into one. I didn't feel anything. And yes, you this would if you count the Rocky movies and you include them all together, this is the ninth one. because you've got the first five, Rocky Balboa, and then Creed 2, and Creed 3. So this would be the ninth. And
Yeah.
yeah, just remember the first one is considered one of the best made, and that's because we end up liking Rocky even though he loses. But the others are tolerable, and they're products of their time. Rocky 4 is definitely a product of the Cold War, but even then, it kind of made Drago at the end not a completely bad person. I mean, he had kind of a change. Here, you don't see that. You just, I mean, you end the movie with Diamond Dave or Diamond Dal or whatever. You have him redeemed because, oh yeah, I beat you up, and I tried to destroy your life, but hey, yeah, we're still pals. I mean, what's the point? No, defeat your enemy, and that's pretty much it. I mean, how much more could you ask out of a Rocky or
Well,
Creed?
it goes back to that whole. Well, the bad guys aren't really the bad guys; they're just misunderstood. That new postmodernist crap that we were doing with movies nowadays. I feel like that was kind of what they were trying to do with that one by having the whole ending. It's like, oh, let's just let bygones, be friends again, even though you jumped me like 30 minutes ago. But whatever. Um, Here's the thing: I didn't hate this film. There's definitely a lot of flaws to it, but I think if you're just watching it kind of like a straight up movie, you're not really nitpicking things. I think there's enough of this film to like, but for me, it's just kind of right in that middle ground where I don't know. To me that there's too much. Just too many issues to ignore while giving acknowledgement that it's still pretty solid and like at least the characters, some of the acting, some of the stuff. So I end up coming with this movie somewhere about a 2.5 out of 5 when it was all said and done. I think that's probably the fairest rating that I can give it. Well, I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts and ratings for you. We'll start with Rob, then go over Rick.
Yeah, I gave it a 2 out of 5, because I thought that it probably was the worst out of the Creed series, while
Hmm.
still being watchable, while still kind of just being like, yeah, I would say it still mostly kept my attention for its 2 hour runtime, even if I was kind of looking at my my phone here towards the end. Um, yeah, like, I think it has its issues, it has its flaws. But it's just I've seen a lot worse movies over the last year, so
Yeah.
I can't be too hard on it. But yeah, I give it a 2 out of 5.
I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5 as well. I was not overwhelmed, and I was like Rob, looking at my watch at the end, and I was like, "When is this going to end?" I thought like you have the big fight where you get to see the Mexican again, because I thought for the most part, as soon as he got knocked out, like we all forgot about him. But then, oh, he pops up at the end over there at the big fight, but I wasn't impressed. I'm like, why am I watching the third part of a film series of a character that I'm not particularly invested in or care about? But it wasn't horrendous. So yeah, 2 out of 5 for me.
All right, Cassie asks the question here: does any of them outdo the first Creed movie? For me, the first Creed movie was obviously pretty good. Basically, they were just remaking kind of like the original Rocky formula. The second one I thought was solid. It wasn't nearly as good as the first one, and then this one is clearly the worst of the three by good example. So I know you guys just recently watched that one. Do you guys kind of agree with that one?
Yeah. Yeah, the first one's the first Creed movie is definitely the best, and then they get worse.
Okay.
Well, I didn't see the second one. I do have that on on DVD here waiting for me. The first one was okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't. I'm not crazy about it, but I'd have to see it again to refresh my memory. But this one is. I'm going to think that this is probably the worst of the three.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say with everything that happened here. So, let's move over to our next movie of the night, and we're going back to Guy Ritchie. Now, Guy Ritchie is a guy who I think I've said this on a couple of reviews of what we've done with his movies that he's pretty much like the biggest hit and miss director I can think of over the last maybe 10, 15 years because his movies are either really good or just downright terrible. Like I'm one of the people who I actually liked The Gentleman and I liked Wrath of Man a lot. But then you look back a little bit further, you had that really awful King Arthur movie that he did not too long ago, and that movie was just the absolute shit. The Man from Uncle, I know it's hit and miss with a lot of people. Then those Sherlock movies are just like, maybe not so much. So it's like you really have to be kind of either all in or all out with Guy Ritchie. There really there's no in between. So here he has another movie with Jason Statham, who I believe before Wrath of Man, those two hadn't worked with each other in almost like 20 years, and now they're working with like their second film in like the last like pretty much what 2 or 3 years now between them. So they're starting to work together again, and it feels like Statham is one of those few guys that still kind of has like a name that like holds any water as far as like action movies go, even though he's not nearly as popular as he once was. But I think people will still be intrigued to watch his movie. But this is a film that came out overseas 2 months ago, I believe, and then only just now got its release here in the United States. I think in some countries they're still kind of delaying the release for it. So this has been a very odd movie. Like Rob said earlier, it felt like that no one was really promoting it. Is because they're not releasing it all in one fell swoop. It's like some countries got it like in January. Obviously, we're getting it now. I think the UK is not even getting it until like April or something like that. So it's a very disjointed movie as far as that goes. But if you like Guy Ritchie movies, you're basically getting like the spy version of Guy Ritchie. So this film is just about a big MacGuffin. Someone has it's funny. This movie had to have been written before the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because the original villains of the first part of the movie are Ukrainians. And remember when we could say Ukrainians were the bad guy and we didn't have to get like deleted off the internet? That was a fun time for the last year or so. But a bunch of Ukrainians steal a device that can essentially control any computer in the world, which includes like military equipment and whatnot. And someone's selling it on the black market for $10 billion. So the British government has assembled a team of spies to figure out who's selling it and hijack it before things get really, really bad. You guys pretty much know the concept. It's not an original concept, but this is what you got here. You have Jason Statham, you have Aubrey Plaza, you have British rapper Bugsy Malone, who has been in quite a few Guy Ritchie movies over the last few years. Josh Hartnett is back in this film, and then of course Hugh Grant is also back in this one as well. So I want to start about the kind of the chemistry. Let me see what gauge with you, Rob, because as far as like the acting and the chemistry goes, I liked everyone with two exceptions. One, Aubrey Plaza, who obviously, if you don't know, Aubrey Plaza is known for her work in like Parks and Rec. She's done a few other movies. That Emily the Criminal movie was a garbage ass film. I will not defend that one. I think Obama put that one on like his top movies of 2022. It was like clearly Obama doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about if you watch that shit. And then like she's known for like kind of like a deadpan like humor style, but in a straight up comedy, like it just does not work. The conflicting styles between her humor and what was supposed to be presented here, because pretty early on she's like kind of like this neurotic, like trying to be this funny character, trying to play up to that, but it's like the material that they gave her was bad, and she's kind of annoying until maybe about like the second act of the film, where she's kind of like played into more of the spy aspect of her character, not as much as the comedian part of it. And then Bugsy Malone, like I said, the rapper who's in the film as well, they don't really do anything with his character at all. Like he's just kind of there to be like kind of like the backup, like the muscle, but it's like he doesn't really have like any real feats throughout the entire film that kind of justifies him being in the movie at all.
Yeah.
What did you think of kind of just like the style of this ensemble cast here for this film?
It's funny because like I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to Aubrey Plaza. When
Mhm.
when she shows up, she's sort of like, it's almost like she's playing like Jason Statham's the straight man, and
Yeah,
she's like the zany character that's constantly trying to be a thorn in his side and like upend, because he's like the cool, confident, kind of like quintessential secret agent, and
yeah,
she's like trying, almost like she's trying to get under his skin. So I remember thinking in the theater at the time, God, she's annoying the shit out of me, and she's usually, can be pretty entertaining.
yeah,
She has some stuff that she's done that have just been obvious misses, but once that kind of got out of the way, I found her to actually be a really good part of the cast, pretty funny, and I actually enjoyed her character. Uh, but like especially when she's on the runway, when they're on like the runway and they're all
yeah,
walking towards like whatever car or building, she really was like, okay, shut the fuck up, because you seriously are like taking me out of
yeah.
this movie right now. So I remember
with the
feeling that way.
singing and the whole bits, and it was just
I
like,
did
yeah,
want
like
to
please stop.
mention one thing. And I don't know. Rick has seen this movie, Point Blank from 1967 with Lee Marvin. The very opening with Carrie Elways walking, you can hear his footsteps on a very there's a very specific pattern. It reminded me exactly of the opening of Point Blank.
Yeah,
Which again, if you haven't seen it, then I'm not gonna I'm not gonna fault you for not knowing it, but I just thought that was a cool stylistic feature while you see the Ukrainians like hijacking the AI system or whatever. So
Well,
that was
I did hear that notice that that's what they were building from the steps and building it
mhm.
to kind of go with the attack on this South African secret lab or whatever. Though to be fair, I don't think I've ever finished Point Blank.
Okay.
Is Angie Dickinson in that one?
She is. Yep.
Oh,
there
okay.
you
So
go.
yeah, I never finished it. So I only saw like the beginning and like bits and pieces. That's the one where Ronald Reagan punches someone, right?
I
Or am
don't
I
think
thinking?
so. I don't think
Oh,
Ronald Reagan's in that one.
oh, okay. Well, then maybe I'm thinking of something else. But I I thought Audrey Plaza was fine. The problem was that I don't know if she was supposed to be kind of like the more like the wacky character who's supposed to be like almost a Gen Z sarcastic figure, or if she was going to be like the I'm the smarter of all the guys here. With what's the rapper's name again?
Bugsy
Oh,
Malone.
Bugsy Malone. Yeah,
Bugsy Malone. Yeah, I thought he wasn't necessary. I don't think he really did anything in the whole movie. You have Carrie Elways, who's kind of playing the almost stereotypical stiff upper lip British bureaucrat. Jason Statham, yeah, he's not an actor. He's an action star. I don't begrudge him that because I mean I don't think I'll ever see him like handle Professor Henry Higgins, nor would I want to. That's pretty much what he does. The one Hugh Grant is obviously having a great time with that
Yeah.
kind of funny voice and
yeah,
the body movements. The one that did surprise me was Josh Hartnett. And again, you know how we were talking about Jonathan Majors? They're building him up to be a star. Josh Hartnett was supposed to be the next big star, especially after Pearl Harbor.
Hmm.
He was supposed to be like the new major star, and I don't know what happened. It kind of fizzled out. So I was puzzled as to why he was here, especially because when he wasn't on screen, I pretty much forgot. My impression from the trailers that I saw was that he was going to be a major part of the plot. That they were going to use him to get in with Hugh Grant and kind of be part of all the shenanigans, but he really wasn't. I mean, he disappeared for long periods of time on film, and I never
yeah.
understood why he was there. I mean, it's nice to see that he's making a comeback, I guess, but I was like, I have no passion for this man. I'll just add real quick that in Pearl Harbor, by hour two, I was rooting for the Japanese. All right, so that gives you that gives you an
Only
idea of
hour
what.
two.
Yeah,
Well, like a couple of things. Like one, yeah, Josh Hartnett, kind of playing like the neurotic, obsessed celebrity was a good touch. I do actually like his performance in this film, but Hugh Grant has been kind of, if you go back and watch The Gentleman, he's been kind of like the best part of both of those films. Like him and Charlie Hunnam in The Gentleman were great together, and this film, he pretty much has like all the charisma like in the movie. The only problem is that he doesn't have anyone to kind of play off of in this movie like he had with Charlie Hunnam in The Gentleman, which made that dynamic work. This one, he's kind of just chewing up the scenery, like every scene he's in all by himself, which kind of makes it like one sided. But it's like without his energy, I think this film will fall a lot more flat than it actually does. So Guy Ritchie should probably thank Hugh Grant just a little bit more for kind of saving this film from being a lot worse than it could have been.
Well, he's the target, so it's
Yeah,
kind of hard for him to be in on the joke because you know what I mean. And so like I think I thought him and Carrie Elways actually did quite a good job with their sort of comedic banter, and they're very different, very different types of characters. But just the whole like, Carrie Elways is like pissed off that his rival is sort of trying to like upend him, Mike. Like Mike, no one
yeah,
likes you. you know, like just and so I thought a lot of that sort of like back and forth banter between the characters was fun. This type of movie, right? The beautiful location,
Yep.
beautiful people, you know, heist or you know, espionage, what event or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just an excuse to go to a nice looking place with, you know, these with beautiful people. But basically, like this movie didn't annoy me. It didn't get under my skin like Knives Out. It didn't have a lot of political or social commentary. It was
Yep.
just like people be in a situation being silly and watching it play out. And you know, I don't think it's a great movie, but I really enjoyed seeing this in the theater. So
Let me ask you this before I go to Rick here. Like, it's a great point that you brought up here. It's like there really wasn't like any extracurriculars with like this film. It's like pretty much just a straightforward movie. And have we gotten to the point already with cinema where if someone just comes out with just a movie and then that's all that it is, that now we can't even like kind of like I guess comprehend it the same way anymore because we're so used to all of this like woke pandering and just political like grandstanding of all these films that now we get a movie where it's just a straight up movie, start to finish, like plot, MacGuffin, characters, and we all go home. It's like, oh yeah, that was interesting. I almost forgot what that felt like. I haven't seen it in so long.
yeah, but a movie basically that is pain free or as painless as possible. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we all have frustrations going to the movie theater, whether it's like other people, concessions, you know, issues with the seating. But it's like we can go to a movie and not be like annoyed or reminded of the world outside. I think that's an accomplishment in the modern day.
Yep. What do you think, Rick?
Well, yes. I mean, it didn't quite work for me, but I know what it was going for. It was just trying to be what we would call a romp, just a good-natured frolic that you're not supposed to take serious, and you just go along with the silliness of the plot, and you do admire the beautiful locations and the kind of high life that Hugh Grant's billionaire lives, and the big jets where you have to have a particular type of wine. He's Jason Statham, and just yeah, and just all this spy versus spy one-upmanship between Mike and Gary Elways, and
Yeah.
just trying to one up each other. So I guess if you go in the right spirit and don't uh, don't take it serious, you can enjoy it. I mean, it didn't quite work for me, but I can kind of roll along with it. Though I suspect that the was it the colon would suggest that this is supposed to be the start of a franchise. You don't call it Operation Fortune colon Ruse de guerre or whatever. And because to me it's just like okay, and it ends with the possibility of there being more. Like I can take it or leave it. Probably leave it, but I don't fault people for liking it. I'll just throw it that way.
Yeah, I guess to that point here is that we talk about like the story where it's just like okay, we just need to get something out of the hands of like the bad guys and whatnot, and we float in between these kind of like really dorky tech billionaires, so we find out are the ones that are in charge trying to like take over the world, and you have like this weird like Russian like kind of like knockout stereotype of oh yeah, they're the I guess the funders, the ones with the $10 billion or whatnot. So it's like it feels like a lot of these things about this film is kind of like it's very basic. It doesn't really try to be more flamboyant to the point. We've seen this with like a lot of Guy Ritchie films where they can go like over the top in both good ways and bad ways. I feel like with Guy Ritchie is that whenever he tries to like step out of his wheelhouse, which is kind of like those like I said, the gentleman snatch like type of like films, he kind of falls on his face a little bit more than just doing what he knows like how to do. So I feel like this one we got more of good Richie than we did in bad Richie in the course of the film. You guys feel that same way?
Well, I almost universally hate Guy Ritchie movies. Like what he does is so much what I hate in like the crime genre where they make it a joke or every
Yeah.
like it's funny. Hey, isn't it funny that we're fucking idiot criminals and we barely get away with it or we get caught because we're so fucking stupid or what and then he
Yep.
adds in like the Cockney accent. it get driven up a wall. He drives me insane with the shit that he thinks is funny or that he wants to film. Having said that, his last two movies I have been a fan of. Wrath of
Mhm.
Man was just a straight up badass heist movie
Yep.
that just absolutely surprised me and took me by storm. So like if he could do that, like this movie, it's not great. Operation Fortune, it's silly, but it's not bogged down with a lot of irritating bullshit like so many of the movies are today. It I don't feel like it tries too hard, to be silly even. Yeah, I think it's a good time at the movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, two for two lately for Guy Ritchie for me. Because like, yeah, even the stuff people love, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I,
Mhm.
not a fan. It's really not my thing. So I've liked the movies he's done lately. So I hope he keeps it up.
Well, I don't think anything will ever be as bad as Swept Away. So I mean, I think that might be the bottom for it.
I've heard terrible things about it. I've never seen it.
It's not great. Let's just put it that way.
Well, that's what happens when you make a movie with your wife
Yeah.
at the time. So I have not seen it, and I never saw the original either. So I have no way of judging it. I I guess I'm not a fan of Guy Ritchie because I hated what he did to Sherlock Holmes. I loved the character, and I thought it was just really horrendous. The two Sherlock Holmes films, though I did like the score. I have to give credit to the score. Uh, with this one, yeah, I thought it was yeah, it was acceptable. I can't really think. I don't think I've seen many Guy Ritchie films. I did have the misfortune of seeing King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, or whatever. That was supposed to be the start of the Arthurian cinematic universe. Luckily, that died. Yeah, it was it was fine. I guess this was not as frenetic as most of his films tend to be. At least the impression that I've always gotten is that they're always very rapid fire. You might have a couple of moments like that, but this was surprisingly
Mhm.
evenly paced compared to what he normally does. So yeah, I can't say I hated it. I can't say I loved it. So I'm kind of in the middle of it.
No, I just thought that Rob was gonna follow up there, but no, no. Yeah. So, like, as far as like this film goes, like, I liked a lot of it. Like I said, there's definitely some chemistry issues with Aubrey Plaza. I think she's probably the weakest character in the film on that aspect. Bugsy Malone, I didn't really have, like I said, he just didn't do much for me, so I didn't really have more for him one way or another. Just could have utilized them a lot better than they did. They just didn't. But outside of that, like, it's a pretty fun movie, and especially since we're in the area right now where there isn't a whole lot of actual fun movies out there, I couldn't really find too much to knock on it from that perspective. So for me, this is a film that, it's not nearly as good as some of the better ones that he does. Like, if you're comparing this to Ralph and Man or The Gentleman, some of the more recent ones, this is definitely the worst of the three of recently. But this isn't bad Richie by any stretch of the imagination. I would give this one a 3 out of 5, and I will say this. I'm not sure if you saw this in your theater, but there's a preview to another movie he has coming out, I think next month,
Mhm.
called The Covenant, which is with Jake Gyllenhaal and Alexander Ludwig. I think that one might be even better than this one. I'm just based on the trailers. That's all I can go of. But with the people involved, I think that one might even top this one out. But for this movie, I give it a solid 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Just a little bit better than average. I felt like.
Yeah.
I thought the cast had good chemistry. Yeah, I think they use Aubrey Plaza probably a bit too much, especially because she's had a heightened profile since she's come off Parks and Rec, and she's kind of been in more stuff than she probably deserves to be. Um, so
Especially after Emily the Criminal.
yeah. So I do think it wears a bit thin, but I also think that she's funny at moments. I think Carrie Elways and Hugh Grant are also really good in this. And yeah, it just kept my interest for 2 hours. It's nice to look at. It's funny. Keeps your attention. So 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
I guess I did not like it as much as you guys did. I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 5. It didn't quite hit the mark. I thought that maybe they were trying a little too hard to be kind of zany and funny and trying to be a little too deadpan for the situation. But I appreciated that Carrie Elwes and especially Hugh Grant kind of knew what they were in, and so they went all in on the kind of camp aspect of it. Yeah, Jason Statham, I mean, he can just speak words, and he's the same in every film he's in. So I wasn't disappointed. I didn't dislike Audrey Plaza, but then again, I'm not as familiar with her work as you guys are. I'm still puzzled as to what Josh Hartnett is doing in all this, uh, because I don't think his character was.
Man's trying to live his life. That's what he's doing.
He's Hugh Grant is a big fan of him, and that's how they are able to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what character. I
It's the
don't
same
know if it's
thing that
in
the
real life.
CIA does with all celebrities. They just insert them into a foreign government. And
Yeah, I just don't see how he's gonna pop up in another feature film, um, if they decide to make more, because that's what I get, that this is supposed to be the first in a series of films. You don't call it Operation Fortune and then Ruse de guerre and give it a subtitle if you're not going to aim to have a second film or more films. I mean, it's not a, I guess, not a terrible film, not a great film for me. So I'm giving it a two and a half. It's probably, it kind of knows what it is. Maybe tries a little too hard in knowing what it is, but I found it. I didn't find it offensive in any way. I think people will enjoy it as a romp, as a kind of a campy film that they could watch and not think much of it. So that's my take there.
I tell you what, this was one of those rare weekends when I went to the movie theater, saw a couple of films, and I was like, you know what? I actually didn't hate what I saw this week. It wasn't the best, but it was actually a pretty solid week in movies. Because when we come here to do this show, we're usually seeing absolute dreck. So to not experience that for one weekend was actually a big relief for me. So I don't know about you guys, but I would like to have more of these weeks rather than the other weeks where we're just like, oh God, why do we do this to ourselves every single week?
Yeah, I will
But
say it was
go
pretty
ahead.
good. It was a pretty good week. This I think this coming week is Scream and that fucking dinosaur movie 65.
Mhm. Well, I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because next week we're going to be reviewing 3 movies, but we're not all going to be watching all 3 of them unless you want to. So I have assigned you guys movies to review this week. So here's your assignment. Next week I'll be taking the bullet and reviewing Scream 6. So that should be fun for me. I already watched the one last year, which was number 5 on my worst list of the year. So I guess I have to be the one to watch number 6. Rob, you'll be the person watching 65, the dinosaur movie with Adam Driver. And then Rick, you'll be watching the Woody Harrelson film Champions about him hanging with the Down syndrome people. So that should be a fun one for you. So that's those are our homework assignments for next week's show, which will be episode 30 of the movie review podcast. So there you go.
So
So
I think I'm actually gonna see all 3.
I might see the dinosaur one as well, because I only saw the first 2 screams, so I'm going to be lost in the nuances of the plot.
You won't.
no, you literally won't. I mean, they lowballed Nev Campbell and wrote her out of the movie anyway. So the only connection to the old Scream movies is Courtney Cox at this point. That's it.
Oh, it's a shame.
Yeah, but we have reached the end of the show, so this is a time where you guys, talk and do everything you need to do. So let's go ahead and start with Rob.
Yep. Hey. Hey guys. I think the mic worked fine. I don't know. Maybe it sounded like shit. I won't know until I hear myself. So yeah, and Cassie says that I enjoy pain, which is true. It's just why I love movies, why I watch 15 to 20 movies a week so that I can keep on my journey of what's good and what's not good. So yeah, I'm probably gonna have some reviews out this week. I don't know what. My life's a mess right now. Watch the Oscar drunk stream on Sunday because that'll be fun. I think these 2 people are joining me, plus my roommate who's an alcoholic. So it should be a good time. She's also seen like half of the Best Picture nominees, so that's pretty good for a normie. But yeah, got some interesting stuff coming up. So just check out my Twitter. I'm sure I'll post it on there.
All right, Rick, your turn.
All right. Well, I pray to be able to do one review. I'm so far behind. So yeah, just on the lookout for reviews. I'm also looking forward to the Academy Awards, where I have a special beer waiting patiently, so that I could just cheer on the winners, and hopefully one or two particular losers that I would like to see lose. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and yeah, just recovering from my journey into the Arizona Cactus League. That's pretty much it.
All righty then, and then I guess I don't know. You just triggered me with the baseball talk. The baseball situation hasn't gotten any better. People, let's just put it that way. It's only rapidly getting worse. But we'll talk about that on another show. So tomorrow night, Barroom Podcast, episode 38. We're gonna talk about Chris Rock finally responding to being slapped by Will Smith on the Netflix special he released this Saturday night. The new Ninja Turtles project that Universal is working on has been announced. The trailer is out and it looks absolutely fucking horror. It looks horrific, people. Multiple stars of The Last of Us are tripling down on their support of the LGBTQ agenda. We'll talk about what Pedro Pascal did earlier today. Talk about that tomorrow. John Morant is seemingly throwing away his entire NBA career, trying to be the next Tupac. We'll talk about that tomorrow night. And then I want to pose this question, but save it for tomorrow. Has Jon Stewart and The Daily Show done unreparable damage to culture and our society? And we'll talk about his recent comments and really just everything that he started 20 years ago that we're still dealing with today. We'll have a good conversation about that tomorrow. Wednesday, Black Pill stream. Myself, John, Spencer, Josh will be on the Bounding in the Comics YouTube. And then Sunday, like I said, it's going to be Oscar time. Myself, Rob, Rick, I'll see if anyone else wants to join us for that show. It's going to be a shit show, people. It's 3.5 hours of literally the worst celebrities you can possibly think of, basically jerking themselves off for the whole run period. Then maybe some awards get thrown out there too. So that's what you guys get to look forward to on Sunday night. And then next Monday, like I said, we'll be here for Scream 65 and the Film Champions. All these guys just look very, very excited to review those movies. Yeah, Scream 6 is not going to be very good. Yeah, we'll talk about the Chris Rock special tomorrow because you guys might be surprised about some of the things I have to say about it. But outside of that, shout out to everyone who joined us in the chat tonight. Zero Dozer, Nick, Duke Nukem, Alex versus Evil, Cassie, obviously. Mephisto joined us for a little bit. DK, who joined us here in the chat today. Spencer, Fox in the Pound, everyone who joined us here tonight. Listen to us talk about these two movies. We thank you. Hopefully, we'll see you tomorrow night for the Barroom Podcast, but it's time to sign off. Hit the spring yard. Let's get out of here. Adios. Wave to the crowd.